Om Sadashivasamārambhām Shankarācārya-madhyamām
Acharya
Asmadācārya-paryantām Vande
Paryantam Vande Guru
Guru-paramparām.
Paramparam
Om Sahana
Om
Vavatu
Sahana
Sahana
Bhavatu
Bhunaktu
Sahanau
Sahaviryan
Bhunaktu
Karavāvahai
Sahaviryam Karavavahai
Tejasvinavadhinamatstu
Yasvinavadhinamastu
Mavidvishavahai.
Mavidvishavahai.
Om
Om Shanti Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti.
Okay, so we had finished the third Anuvaka and we are on Anuvaka 4. So I have already put the Arvind's chanting. I hope you have listened to it. We look at the first few lines. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha anandam brahmano vidvan na bibeti kadachaneti. So earlier in the last mantra ended with tadayapa api tadayapya shloko bhavati. Tad api esha shloko bhavati. There also one shloka is there, it was said. And these shlokas are all from the Rig mantra. And I said also that the shloka ends usually with the word iti. And here if you see, it starts with yato vacho nivartante and ends at nabhibeti kadachan iti. So kadachaneti is kadachana iti. So that's where the shloka ends. The Rig Veda mantra ends. So there are different interpretations for his mantra. Some sub-commentators say that you can interpret the mantra, the Anandam Brahmano Vidvan portion. Where is that? It is in the third part of it, third sub-sentence. Anandam Brahmano Vidvan. There are some commentators who say that the word Brahmana here, Brahma, is to be interpreted as Saguna Brahman. That is Hiranyagarbha, Lord Brahmarji. There are others who say that we can take it as connected to Yato Vacho Nivartante, and therefore, which literally means from whom the words return. In other words, words are not able to describe that Brahman, and therefore, in that context, there are sub-commentators who say that Brahmana here or Brahma here should be taken as Nirguna Brahma by connecting it to the first phrase, Yato Vacho Nivartante. Words are unable to describe. But contextually, if you look at all the Anuvakas we have done so far, what is actually being talked about? We are talking about the koshas, right? The Rig mantra refers to corresponding Annamaya kosha at the Vyashti level. At the Samashti level also Annamaya kosha is there. Samashti level Pranamaya kosha is there. Samashti level Manomaya kosha is there. So where there are koshas, they are all anatma, they are all guna, sagunaha. And therefore, even though there are commentators who say that it can be taken as Nirguna Brahman, here we say that Saguna Brahman is a better fit. Because in the context of the other Anuvakas, we are talking about the koshas only. And therefore, kosha means Saguna Brahman. Now look at the words. Yato vacho nivartante. Literally from whom the words return. Words are unable to describe that Brahman. That is one part of it. And aprapya manasa saha. Even the mind, aprapya. Mind also cannot hold it, cannot conceive of it. Which is to say that understanding this Saguna Brahman, Lord Brahmaji, in totality is very difficult. Because understanding Saguna Brahman or Lord Brahmaji means what? Understanding creation itself. Because Hiranyagarbha and Virat, they are not different from creation, entire creation. And therefore, aprapya manasasaha, it is not possible for the human mind to conceive of that Hiranyagarbha. Okay. Then Hiranyagarbha is a embodiment of the highest Brahmananda. You can call it Hiranyagarbhananda. The highest worldly Ananda, the highest Ananda which is possible in this relative world. In the Vyavaharika Prapancha, the highest Ananda is possible when you are Brahmaji. And this Samashti mind, Manaha, Samashti Manaha, which is Hiranyagarbha, which is Lord Brahmaji, this is Upasana actually. This is Upasana that Lord Brahmaji is going to be invoked on the Vyashti Manomaya Koshaha. What is the benefit? He says, Na bibheti kadachaneti. He will have no fear at all. This is Sakama benefit, remember. He will have relative security. And why do you say that? Because as you meditate, so you become. That is the rule. And what is the life span of Hiranyagarbha? Remember that 2000 Chaturyugas is 1 day of Hiranyagarbha. Similarly, we have another 2000 Chaturyugas as 1 night. And that to be multiplied by 365 into 100. That is the totality of Hiranyagarbha's life. So there is relative security. It is apekshika security, not complete security, relative security. And that is the benefit if you are meditating upon Saguna Brahma with the intention of getting material benefits. So Sakama Dhyanam. Your meditation is Sakama with Kama, with desires. Then this is the benefit. Na bibeti kadachaneti. Now the mantra doesn't state what is the Nishkama benefit. If you meditate upon the same Hiranyagarbha, but with Nishkama attitude, what is the benefit? The mantra doesn't state, but by now we should know. Any meditation which is Nishkama gives you what? Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrata, Chitta Vishalata. That is, Chitta Shuddhi is purity of mind. Chitta Ekagrata is the oneness, one-pointedness of the mind. And Chitta Vishalata is the expansion of the mind to encompass the entire universe. In other words, the mind becomes very, very subtle. So this is the mantra part of it. It ends at na bhibeti kadachana iti. Okay. Then look at the moolam. It says tasyesha eva sharira atma yah purvasya. So tasya esha eva sharira atma. This manomaya atma is called sharira atma. Shariram means that atma which is in the body. So this manomaya kosha, manomaya atma is called sharira atma because it is within the pranamaya kosha. How have we arrived at this? Why do we say that this manomaya atma is within the pranamaya kosha? I hope you remember the last 3 anuvakas. What was the flow of the anuvakas? Guys, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Acharya.
Okay, so I know reply.
We say that, for example, the subtler kosha takes the shape of the grosser one. So the pranamaya kosha takes the shape of the manomaya kosha, and
No,
in that way.
it's
No?
the reverse. The pranamaya kosha took the shape of the annamaya kosha. Annamaya kosha is the only kosha which has a shape. Annamaya kosha has physical body, right? And the last 2 mantras we saw, last 2 anuvakas we saw that pranamaya kosha was said to be interior to the annamaya kosha, which means it is within the annamaya kosha, as if poured into the annamaya kosha. Therefore, it takes the shape of the annamaya kosha. And when we rejected pranamaya kosha as atma, we moved to manomaya kosha. This Manomaya Kosha we said is Antara, interior into Pranamaya Kosha. It is obtaining within the Pranamaya Kosha. And since the Pranamaya Kosha takes the shape of the Annamaya Kosha, this Manomaya Kosha also has taken the shape of the Pranamaya Kosha, which is the Annamaya Kosha shape only. Okay. And Shankara says here, therefore, this Manomaya Kosha is the inner Atma of the Pranamaya Kosha. It's a very important statement he has made. It is the inner Atma of the Pranamaya Kosha. Okay. With this, Yaf Purvasya as discussed earlier. As discussed earlier means what earlier? We discussed about Pranamaya Kosha obtaining within the Annamaya Kosha. And now he is saying in the same way, this Manomaya Atma. Remember now we are at Manomaya as I. We are saying I am Manomaya, Aham Manomaya Atma. We are not saying Kosha. When we say Manomaya Kosha, we would have moved to Vijnanamaya Atma. So, right? We discarded Annamaya as Atma by moving to Pranamaya. We discarded Pranamaya as Atma and made it into a Kosha by moving to Manomaya. And now we are discarding, we are talking about Manomaya Kosha only. Now we have to discard the Manomaya Kosha and enter the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And that is what the next line says, Tasmadva etasmat manomayat anyo antara atma vijnanamayaha. Anyaha antaraha. Anya is different from what? From etasmat manomayat. Different from the manomaya kosha, anyaha, and antaraha, and interior to the manomaya kosha is the vijnanamaya atma. So now I have moved to vijnanamaya. I am saying I am the vijnanamaya atma. Thereby I have relegated the manomaya to what? To the status of kosha. So these two words you must remember, antaraha, which is interior to, which is inside, and anyaha, which is different from. Different from what? Tasmat etasmat manomayat. From this manomaya. And then eshaha tena eshaha purnaha. Eshaha purnaha. This eshaha is this. This is what? This manomaya which we have discarded by saying it is anatma, this manomaya koshaha purnaha is filled with tena. Tena is by that, by that vijnanamaya which I have now claimed as myself. So when I understand that I am vijnanamaya, I have also at the same time relegated manomaya, discarded manomaya as anatma. And therefore, the manomaya is being as if destroyed in the vijnanamaya. And this resolution we saw earlier, this mental destruction, it was called pravilapanam. So this is the meditation. This is on the Vyashti part, but we must remember that at each Vyashti meditation, when the Vyashti meditation ends, we have to conclude it with the Samashti meditation also. So here, if you are saying that Manomaya has been discarded, has been resolved, has been destroyed by merging or resolution into Vijnanamaya, that is the Vyashti level. Similarly, you have to extend that meditation further and say that the Samashti Manomaya Kosha is also destroyed by resolving into the Samashti Vijnanamaya Kosha. Okay. If I don't do the second part, if I stick only to the Vyashti part, the individual part, then I can never come to the Adhishthanam, the very substratum which is Jagad Adhishthanam, which is Brahman. And therefore, with each resolution, which is Pranamaya into Annamaya, that is at the level of Vyashti. Then you must similarly say Samashti Pranamaya into Virat. Samashti Annamaya is Virat. Samashti Pranamaya into Samashti Virat, that is one. Similarly, samashti manomaya into samashti pranamaya, and similarly, samashti pranamaya into samashti manomaya, and similarly, samashti manomaya is being resolved into samashti vijnanamaya. This resolution has to be done at samashti level also. Only by doing the resolution at samashti level, you are going to arrive at the samashti itself, which is Brahman. Jagat Adhishthanam, the very support of the universe, which is Brahman. To arrive at that, you have to move from the Vyashti level, the individual level, to the samashti level. Without the Vyashti meditation, without the individual meditation, you cannot come to the samashti meditation. So both are equally important. And I asked a question in yesterday's in the group, saying that Shankara gives a title that Manomaya is Vedatma. Now all sort of replies were given, but the reply is very simple. If you look at the third Anuvaka, what does it say? Tasya yajureva shiraha rik dakshina pakshaha samuttara pakshaha. It is taking the Vedas as the parts of Manomaya. And therefore that is the reason why Shankara says Manomaya can be called Ved Atma. Okay, we move on to the next part of the mantra. Sava eshaha Purusha Vida eva. Sava eshaha. This Vijnanamaya also, Purusha Vida eva, is of human form only. Why? Because Vijnanamaya has borrowed the shape from Manomaya. Manomaya has borrowed from Pranamaya. Pranamaya has borrowed from Annamaya. Annamaya is of the shape of the human being, Purusha Akara. Therefore, Vijnanamaya also is Purusha Vida eva, has the same form as the human being. I am Purusha Vidaha. This Vijnanamaya Atma is also of human form. And then he says, Anvayam Purusha Vidaha. Anu, I am Purusha Vida. This Vijnanamaya also takes on the form of that human shape, which comes from Manomaya and finally has been taken from Annamaya. Having done that, what is the next step? Next step is to discuss the 5 factors. Now, remember that Vijnanamaya stands for knowledge, right? Jnanam. And for any karma, Jnanam is required. What does Manomaya stand for? Manomaya stands for doubts, samshaya. What is the definition of Manaha? Tattvabodha, anybody remembers? Manaha and Buddhihi definitions are important over here. Guys, I'm not going to give up.
Sankalpa Vikalpatmak is man and Nishchayatmika is buddhi.
Very good. Sankalpa Vikalpa Atmika is Manaha. Nishchaya Atmika is Buddhihi. Therefore, Nishchaya Atmika means decision making. It decides, it has knowledge. And therefore, Vijnanamaya stands for knowledge. Knowledge is required to do any karma. Sankalpa Vikalpa means a vacillating mind, stands for doubt. And therefore, between Vijnanamaya and Manomaya, if you have to say which is more powerful, you have to answer the question of, is Jnanam more powerful or is Samshaya more powerful? Obviously, Jnanam is more powerful. Why? Because between Jnanam and Samshaya, which is more powerful, and why would you say that? Come on.
Jnanam is more powerful because it removes samshaya.
Because it removes samshaya. Jnanam destroys samshaya and therefore Jnanam is more powerful. Okay. Therefore, tasya, of that Vijnanamaya, Shraddhaiva Shiraha. Tasya Shraddhaiva Shiraha. Shraddha is the head. Okay. Vijnanamaya is the Jnanam principle, and a person who has the knowledge alone can become a doer, because every deliberate karma has to have knowledge to be able to execute that karma. So we say janati ichhati yatate. Janati, out of the jnanam, ichha. Desire comes. So one out of the knowledge that one has, one gets a desire, and yatate. Once one has a desire, then you work towards that goal. And therefore, remember that it is only the pramata, the knower, who can finally become a karta. Pramata alone can become a karta. And what is the main factor which contributes over here? The Upanishad says Shraddha alone. Shraddha is faith in the Pramanam, faith in the Vedas, as Tattvaboda said, faith in the words of the Vedas and the words of the Guru. So hence any spiritual jnanam, any spiritual knowledge comes from where? From Shastra Pramanam only. Why? Because Brahman is not available to your sense organs. So, and science works on the data gathered by sense organs. Since Brahman is not available to sense organs, it is useless to try to gather any knowledge about Brahman or Atma from science, because science, the data for science comes from where? From sense organs alone. And that is why Brahman, Atma not being available to sense organs, science cannot talk about Brahman at all. Therefore, if somebody comes and says, I don't believe in the Shastra, you shouldn't even try to, have an argument. It's best to say, yes, yes, you are right, and leave it, right? Now, Upanishad says here, Shraddhaiva Shiraha. Shraddha, we know, is Guru Veda Vakyeshu Vishwasaha, Tattvaboda. Any knowledge is dependent upon your faith in the validity of the source of that knowledge, validity of the Pramanam. And that's why no Vedic ritual can ever be performed without faith in the Veda Pramanam. And therefore, Veda Pramanam is a Pramanam only for the person who has a clear knowledge of the Pramanam, of the Veda, who knows clearly what is the karma and what is the phalam, what is the consequence, what is the fruit of that karma. And if I have to believe that a particular karma will give a particular fruit, remember that that knowledge comes where? Only in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in the Karma Kanda. And therefore, since Shraddha is the prerequisite for any Vedic karma, okay, how I just explained, the knowledge of the karma comes from Karma Kanda. So if you say that Nachiketa's Homam, it will give you Swarga. Who says that? That is said in the Upanishad. Nowhere else will you find in the Laukika world, nowhere else is there any connection between Nachiketa's Homam and going to Swarga. And therefore, if you are going to do that Nachiketa's Homam with the intention of going to Swarga, the prerequisite is what? Shraddha in the Veda, saying that Veda says this, and what Veda says can never be wrong. And therefore, I should do that particular Homam. And that is why Shraddha is said to be the head of the Vijnanamaya Atma. Vijnanamaya Atma, remember, is the Karta. Whenever you say, I am doing this job, you are referring to Vijnanamaya Atma. If you are saying that I am eating, you are eating because it is mandated by the Pranamaya Kosha. But the act of eating, the Kartritvam, the doership, belongs to Vijnanamaya Kosha only. And therefore, here, of course, we are talking about Vijnanamaya Atma. We have not yet made it a Kosha. And therefore, Shraddha is said to be the head. Tasya Shraddhaiva Shiraha. The most important part of the Vijnanamaya Kosha Atma is the knowledge, the faith that what Karma Kanda says is true. And that is why you will do any karma mandated in the Karma Kanda. So that's the approach for all of us. Where worldly knowledge is concerned, where you have any knowledge about the world and its doings, and going to Kashmir, going to USA, going to Switzerland, don't look at the Veda. There, look at your sense organs. They are the pramanam. But for knowledge which is not available to sense organs, alaukika knowledge, shastram is pramanam. And so correct approach is, for worldly knowledge, take science as pramanam or sense organs as pramanam. For shastric knowledge, take only shastra as pramanam. Okay, so that's why Shraddha, faith in the Veda as a pramanam is the very most important part, the head for the karta, the Vijnanamaya Atma. Then Ritam Dakshina Pakshaha. So Ritam here is correct understanding. Correct understanding of what? Correct understanding of the data available in Shastra, of the words of the Shastra. They have to be understood correctly, right? Dakshina Pakshaha is the right side. So the correct understanding, the right understanding is the right side, Dakshina Pakshaha of the Vijnanamaya Atma. Now, why does he say right understanding? Remember that even the data from your senses, they have to be interpreted properly, right? Take an example. When you look up outside, right, the sense organs, what do they report to you? That I am stationary, I am momentless, I'm not moving at all. But what does science tell you? In an overall context, when you take, the earth is not only revolving on its axis, but it is also moving through space. Therefore, there are two types of movement. The coaxial movement is there, plus the rotational movement of the earth through space is also there around the sun. Thus, for any correct interpretation of data, a wider view is necessary. And therefore, here also, in Shastric data to be interpreted, the view has to be from a proper authority, right? So that is what is meant over here. Pradam Dakshina Pakshaha, the data of the Shastram, the words of the Shastram have to be interpreted properly by an Acharya from the tradition. Then only it is called rhythm, right understanding. Then Satyam Uttara Pakshaha. Truthfulness is the left side. So Dakshina Pakshaha is the right side of the Vijnanamaya Atma. Uttara Pakshaha is the left side of the Vijnanamaya Atma. Uttara means north, but by now you know, right? Then the left hand is facing the north when you are facing the east. So Satyam Uttara Pakshaha. Okay. So this knowledge which you have gathered from the Shastra, it is not enough to have the knowledge. It is useful only if it is implemented in your life. And that is why they say Satyam Vada, speak the truth, but Dharmam Chara. As far as your actions are concerned, they should be dharmic. And you can take the example of, what they call, let us say, Surya Namaskara. I may know, somebody may have taught me theoretically how the asana, how the Surya Namaskara is to be done, how I have to bend, how many, how many parts there are, how many particular asanas there are in one round, what is the position of my muscles, my bone, everything, all techniques perfectly known. I also know the mantras to which the Surya Namaskara is to be done. But if it has to benefit me, that knowledge alone is not sufficient. I have to practice. And therefore, knowledge is incomplete without practice as far as this part is concerned. And therefore, Satyam here, because it is following Ritam. Ritam is taken as the correct knowledge, correct understanding. Satyam has to be taken as the correct implementation. The practice of the Vedic teaching is Satyam over here. Right. So, Ritam Yatha Shastra Jnanam. Ritam is the proper understanding of Shastram Satyam yatha shastra anushtanam. Satyam here is the implementation of the rhythm, of the correct knowledge that you have gathered from Shastram, you have to implement. That implementation is called Satyam over here, not the other Satyams. Okay, not the Satyam meaning truth, not Satyam of existence. That must be known clearly. And remember that this meaning we already explained this meaning where in the Shanti Mantra. If you don't remember, go back to the Shanti Mantra lecture class and listen to it. The same meaning we explained there also. Okay. So, in short, learn in accordance with the Shastra and then practice what you have learned. Then, Yoga Atma. So, this Atma, this Vijnanamaya Atma is called Vijnanamaya Atma here. And the Atma is important because all Vaidika karma, we said earlier, requires the knowledge of how to do the karma. Therefore, there is always an order. First knowledge, then desire, then karma. And that is why we said Vijnanamaya is called Karta. It's called the Karta Atma. Remember that Manomaya is never the Karta. Manomaya is only the Karanam, the tool. So when you're looking at the different koshas, the Vijnanamaya is always the Karta. Whenever you say I am doing, Karta is, I am the Karta, I am the doer. You are referring to Vijnanamaya. The Vijnanamaya uses the Manomaya as the Karanam, the tool. Of course, Anandamaya has another status. It is the Bhokta Atma. It is the enjoyer. So you have Vijnanamaya as the Karta, Manomaya as the tool, the Karanam, and Bhokta is Anandamaya. Okay. Okay, now let's come to the next one. Yoga Atma. So yoga here, Shankara explains, is a focused lifestyle, which means the capacity to engage in focus, chitta vritti nirodha, concentration. So yoga atma, and here atma means the central portion. We saw this earlier also. So concentration is the central portion, and therefore the yoga is a lifestyle where your final goal is in front of you all the time, is in focus all the time. What is your final goal? Moksha. And Krishna said this in Gita, Vyavasayika Atmika Buddhihi. It is always necessary to remember my final objective of life. And that is one of the reasons why Karmakanda has so many rituals. Each ritual reminds you constantly of the fact, what is my final destination? So this constant awareness that moksha is my destination, that is what is called yoga here. So that awareness, that concentration is the central portion of the Vijnanamaya Atma. And Shankara gives a very beautiful translation. Yoga is equal to Samadhanam. Samadhanam, what was the definition in Tattva Bodha? Anybody? Samadhanam definition in Tattva Bodha. Many of you teach Tattva Bodha. It should be at the tip of your tongue. What happened? Forgot? Vandana?
So I'm trying to remember.
Anybody? Arunaji just finished one. Tattva Bodha.
Chit ekagrata.
Chitta ekagrata. The ability to focus your mind. Right? So Shankara gives the same translation there. He says yoga is equal to yuktihi is equal to samadhanam. The capacity to focus is called samadhanam. So yoga here, the capacity to focus is the central portion of the Vijnanamaya, of the Karta. And Shankara adds that if this yogaha is not present, if this samadhanam is not present, the other three, which are what? Shraddha, Ritam, and Satyam, they are being weakened. You will not be able to function properly. And therefore, Yoga Atma Vijnanamayasya, he says. Therefore, this capacity to focus, samadhanam, is the very essence of the Vijnanamaya Atma, the Karta. This capacity he calls Yogaha here. At least the mantra calls it Yogaha. Then, Maham Pucham Pratishtha. So, Maham. What is Maham? Maham means Mahatvam. Mahatvam is the firstborn over here. Pratham Ajam. The firstborn, Prathama Jama, is what? Is the Mahaha, the firstborn. What is the name for the firstborn? Hiranyagarbha. Right? So Mahaha here is Hiranyagarbha. Remember that Yoga Shastra talks about Mahat. Okay. But when you speak about Mahat in Vedanta, it is very specific. It talks about Hiranyagarbha, and this Mahat appears in Veda only. Okay, and where does this Mahat appear? Shankara quotes an Upanishad, Bhramananda Upanishad. It says, Mahadyaksham Prathamajam Veda. Know that Mahat is firstborn. Okay, so it's a reference to that, and therefore Maha here means Hiranyagarbha. In this case, Samashti Vijnanamaya. Okay, Samashti Vijnanamaya. And this Samashti Vijnanamaya Ishvara is Mahapucham, Pucham, the lowest part, the tail. We saw that before. And what is the tail? Pratishtha. It is the support of the Vijnanamaya Atma. Why is he saying this? Because every action, remember that the karanams, the tool, etc., they function because the Karta Atma is there, Vijnanamaya is there. But the Karta cannot function without what? Without the blessing of Ishvara. In fact, no Indriya can function without the blessing of Ishvara. And where did we see this earlier? Adhishthanam tatha karta, karanam cha pratak vidam, vividasya pratak cheshtaha, daiva chaivatra panchamam. This is the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in case you have forgotten, the 14th verse. You can go back and see. Every organ can function where Daivam cha atra panchamam. Daivam cha atra. Only when backed by the corresponding Adhisthana Devata. Samashti Devata has to be there to back. And the total Adhisthana Devata is what? Behind all the Devatas, there is one Devata. And that Devata is what? Hiranyagarbha. And therefore, Pratishtha. All organs can function when blessed by their individual Devatas. The individual Devatas can function only when blessed by the totality, the Samashti Devata, Hiranyagarbha. And therefore, Hiranyagarbha is the Pratishtha, the support. And Tadapi Esha Shloko Bhavati. In this connection, now a Rig mantra is being presented. Api. Api means, this Api indicates for this Vijnanamaya Kosha also, there is a Rig mantra, which we will talk about in the next Anuvaka. That is what he is saying. Okay, any questions? If you are finding it difficult, please let me know, because we are progressing, and after some time you will find, if you have not understood, you will be totally at sea. And the problem with being totally at sea is that you won't feel like coming to class afterwards. Okay, so any questions at all?
Acharya, did we answer the question you had put? Because I was disconnected in between for some time, so I might have missed it. The question you had,
in the group?
why is the Manomaya called?
It is called Manomaya because in Anuvaka 3, if you see, when you talk about the 5 parts of Manomaya, it says Tasya Yajureva Shiraha Rik Dakshina Pakshaha Samuttara Pakshaha. It names the 3 Vedas as parts of Manomaya. and that is why Veda Atma.
Okay. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
All right. Now we will go to Anuvaka number 5. So we look at the first 3 phrases. Vijnanam yajnam tanute, karmani tanute api cha. Karmani tanute api cha. Vijnanam devaha sarve, brahma jeshtham upasate. Vijnanam brahma chedveda, tasmat chen na pramadyati. Sharire papmano hitva. Sarvan kaman samashnuta iti. Sarvan kaman samashnuta iti. That is where the rig mantra ends. What rig mantra? Referred to here by Tadapi Esha Shloko Bhavati in Anuvaka 4. Starts with Vijnanam Yajnam Tanute, ends at Sarvan Kaman Sama Ashnuta iti. Okay, so now let's look at the words. Okay, just one pronunciation word, a pronunciation comment. This first word is Vijnanam Yajnam Tanute. Traditionally, it can be pronounced as Vijnanai Yajnam Tanute. Why? Because the Anuswara, the dot above the na, is followed by ya. So, Vijnanam Yajnam Tanute is okay. Vijnanai Yajnam Tanute is also okay. Both are okay, but traditionally, Vijnanai Yajnam Tanute is used in chanting, which is why if you see Arvind's chant of this particular mantra, he has used the traditional method, Vijnanai Yajnam Tanute. Okay. The same rule is also applied when the Anuswara is followed by Lakara. Okay, the Anuswara changes into La, just for, you will see later when it happens. Okay, so Vijnanam Yajnam Tanute. Vijnanam here means knowledge. Okay, now if you look at the line, it says Vijnanam Yajnam Tanute. Literal translation is knowledge performs the yajna. Okay, and that obviously you're talking about here. What you're talking about any karma. Okay, Vaidika karma, Laukika karma, and if you translate that particular phrase, it means literal translation is knowledge performs the karma. Obviously, this is Vachyartham, right? Vachyartham cannot be taken. You have to take the Lakshyartham, the implied meaning. And therefore, Vijnanam here has to be understood as the person having the Vijnanam. Okay, so Vijnanam is the person having Vijnanam perform the karma. So that little understanding has to be clear. Now, karmani tanute api. Now, I said it can refer to Vaidika karma and Laukika karma, right? That comes from this particular part of the mantra. The first part of the mantra says, Vijnanam Yajnam Tanute. The knower of the person who has the knowledge, he does the yajna. The person who has the knowledge of the yajna, he does the yajna. And karmani tanute apicha, he also does karma. Okay, so yajna itself is a karma. Therefore, commentators say that you have to give the meaning of Vaidika karma to the word yajnam, and you have to give the meaning of worldly karma, Laukika karma, to the word karmani. So taken together, it means that the knower of the karma does the yajnam, Vaidika karma, also does the Laukika karma. Both karmas are performed only by a person who has knowledge. Okay, so in this discussion now, we have to keep that particular thing in mind. We are not talking only about Vedika karma, we are also talking about Laukika karma, other actions also. Okay, again, we should remember the connection between, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, as far as karma is concerned. Okay, I said Vijnanamaya is Karta, Manomaya is Karanam, Anandamaya is Bhokta. So I am not explaining these words. We are in Taittiriya Upanishad class. We are going to move into Mandukya class. So certain words you have to know. If you don't know, please ask. I mean, I'm not saying that you should know, but I'm not explaining on the presumption that you are all senior students, you all know. If you don't, please ask. There's no problem. I will explain. So Anandamaya is Bhokta Atma. Vijnanamaya is Karta Atma. Manomaya is Karana Atma. Annamaya and Pranamaya are Karya Atma, the products. Okay. So here Upanishad points out that this Vijnanamaya Atma is the Karta, which means what? He is capable of knowing, Janati, and desiring, Ichhati, and then converting the desire by taking some action, Karoti. So Janati, Ichhati, Karoti. This is possible. This is done by the Vijnanamaya Atma, the Karta. And this choosing has to be done by the faculty of discrimination, which is the intellect, right? So Buddhi is the intellect over here. Remember Kathopanishad, Buddhim tu sarathi vidhim. Know that the Buddhi is the charioteer. And therefore this Vijnanamaya Atma alone performs all Vaidika karmas. Why am I saying Vaidika karmas? So for those who have understood the Shastram, for them alone, the concept of Adrishta karma is relevant. Why? Because he has Shraddha in Shastram. He has belief in the Shastram. If Shraddha in the Shastram is not there, a human being who does not have Shraddha in the Shastram, an atheist, for example, he has only two Purusharthas, Artha and Kama. Right? Only a person who has Shraddha in the Shastram, he has the other two Purusharthas also. He also has Artha and Kama, but because he is a Shraddhavan, because he's got Shraddha, he has got Dharma Purushartha and Moksha Purushartha also. Okay. Of course, remember that the same Karta, the Vijnanamaya Atma, the same Karta, he does all Laukika karma also, all worldly activities, he also does. He alone does. Nobody else does. He does Vaidika karma. He also does Laukika karma. And therefore, the Vijnanamaya Atma is the Karta for both Vaidika and Laukika karma. Okay. Now, look at the Moolam. Vijnanam Devaha Sarvehe Jeshtham Upasate. So, Sarvehe Devaha, all the gods, all the gods, Upasate Vijnanam, meditate upon the Vijnanamaya Atma, as what? Brahma Jeshtham, as Hiranyagarbha, Lord Brahmaji, who is Jeshtham, who is the eldest, the first one. See, all the gods, they meditate upon Brahmaji as the eldest. Because Hiranyagarbha is also Samashti Vijnanamaya, Sukshma Shariram, right? So in this context, in the discussion, Hiranyagarbha is Samashti Vijnanamaya. And of course, after saying Sarve Devaha, Shankara thinks, in case anybody is there among you who doesn't know what are Devas, Shankara adds very helpfully, Indra, etc. So he gives a name, one name, Indra, is also a Deva. Similarly, there are other Devas. They all meditate upon Samashti Vijnanamaya Kosha. Remember that Vyashti Vijnanamaya is identical to Samashti Vijnanamaya, right? And therefore, when you say that Devas meditate upon Samashti Vijnanamaya, when you meditate upon Vyashti Vijnanamaya, you have to move that meditation to Samashti Vijnanamaya also. Okay. They are meditating. That means what? They are kartas. So devas are kartas. That is what is being said here. Devas upasate. They are doing upasana. So they have got karta status. Is there a problem with what you know? All the knowledge which we have gathered so far, the statement that a deva is a karta, does it jar you somewhere? It should. Is it not? No? If devas are kartas, what is the implication?
It would also be bhoktas.
Correct. He will also be bhaktas. That is one thing. What is the immediate result of being a karta?
They have free will.
Sorry?
That they have free will.
Okay, they have free will, which means what? They can generate punyam and papam.
They generate punya and papa.
Right. Now the point is that throughout the scripture, the basic assumption is that only in the human birth you have free will. And therefore, all other births, you are only bhokta. You can be a karta only in the human birth. We saw this when we did Vivekachudamani. You can be a karta only in the human birth. And that is why they say that human birth is so important, because you can work towards moksha only in your human birth. This you should never forget. And therefore, this statement that Vijnanam devaha sarve brahma jeshtham upasate. They worship the Brahman as Sagana Brahman as the eldest, as the superior. There has to be an objection, which a Purvapakshi does. He says devas cannot have karta status. And doing upasana is kartritvam. How do you reconcile? Shankara doesn't bother. Okay. Shankara doesn't bother. But there is a commentary called Vanamala Vakya. Now, if you look on the Sringeri, if you're interested, on the Sringeri website, look at this Taittiriya Upanishad, Shankara Bhashyam. Against that, you will find Vanamala Vakya, the sub-commentary on the Bhashyam. It's not a commentary on Upanishad. It's a commentary on the Bhashyam. And it's by a very famous Acharya called Krishnananda Tirtha. Okay. So he says, you are right. Devas cannot perform upasanas as devas, because they have no kartritvam at all. They are not kartas. They are only bhoktas. And therefore, whenever you find that there is such a statement in the Shastram that devas are doing something, remember this is always to be connected to the past human life of the devas, where they had kartritvam and they performed the upasana, and as a result of that punyam, they became devatas. Okay, so Jeshtham, that particular explanation is given in that particular sub-commentary. And Jeshtham is, of course, I said, firstborn. We should note, of course, that from the Samashti viewpoint, Vijnanamaya is Hiranyagarbha. But from the Vyashti human point, Vijnanamaya has to be taken as Jnanam alone. Because any human activity requires Jnanam to come first, and then Ichha, desire, and then Kriya, action. So Vijnanam Brahma Upasate means this Hiranyagarbha, the Devas meditate upon. Okay. Now, Shruti here doesn't mention the fruits of that Upasana. Upasana Phalam it doesn't mention. So Shankara supplies here. that by meditation on Hiranyagarbha, they will get the qualities of Hiranyagarbha, which is what? Jnanam and Aishwaryam. Jnanam is what? Knowledge. Aishwaryam is overlordship. These two things, the person who meditates upon Hiranyagarbha, he will acquire. So with this, we'll stop here. Any questions? Okay. So with this, we'll stop. And I would again and again urge you that before you come to class, please go back and revise the previous Anuvakas so that, a proper understanding of the class is possible. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam
Purnat
Purnamudachyate Purnasya
Purnam Eva
Purnameva
Vashishyate
Vashishyate.
Om
Om
Shanti
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 Shanti.
Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya.
Om
Thank you.
Om Namah Shivaya.